Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode here on the Project Carlsbad on the RolloRescue channel. I'm your host, Brian. And in today's episode, I'm going to be showing you a stupid, kind of boneheaded, expensive mistake that I made when I purchased the car. And then after I show you why I'm spending an extra $1,000 on this car that I hadn't planned on spending, we're gonna do a little bit of an injector service to make sure that it's ready to go when we get started up again here soon. And then I'm going to be doing the engine mounts on it. Now let's take a look at the tires and rims that came on this car and why I'm an idiot. So let's have a little conversation about a pretty significant mistake I made when I purchased this car, and it has to do with these guys right here. Now these are style 37 BMW wheels, also known as M parallels. It's a staggered set. We have 9.5 inch wide on the back and 8.5 inch wide on the front. And to the untrained eye, these look like M parallels. I mean, in reality, they are. The problem is that they're replicas. Now the thing about these rims is that they're pretty highly sought after. A lot of people will actually look at a car and buy it strictly because it has the rims on them, because if they're in really good shape, you can actually resell them for a lot of money. So the first really clear indication that these are replicas are that they're chrome. And unfortunately, even the chrome on these is in terrible shape, mostly because they came from California and that sea salt air probably had done a really big number on these. Now, as far as I know, and I'm not 100% sure, that you could not get chromed wheels from the factory on E38s. Now, there may have been an option to get them dealer installed and still have them be OEM BMW chromed wheels, but as far as I know, that's exceedingly rare, if at all. And so the first thing you can do is you can take your hand and you can put it back on the back side of the spokes that are on here, and every single one of the back sides of all these spokes need to be smooth. And I can feel one right here that's got an indent on it. That is a stamp that would indicate that this is a replica. And so when you turn this thing around, you can see on here that there are these stamps that are automatically indicators that these are replicas. Some other things you can look at besides the stamps that are out of it, you should also see the part numbers etched into at least a couple of the spokes. And then the last indicator is that there's also usually a drainage channel out of the holes. In fact, I do actually have one original here with me that I will show you. And so this is the spare that came out of this car, which is one of the reasons I thought that this was actually, that they had original OEM style 37 wheels on it, but come to find out they didn't. On the build sheet, it did say that it did have this option. So what I think happened is that the originals probably were damaged and they replaced all of them with replicas, because the new ones would have been incredibly expensive. And these are really dirty, but and I'll get a close-up on these as well, but on here you can see that there's actually numbers stamped with the part numbers on there. It's got the build date, 599 on them, and it's got the BMW stamp on it, and it has those channels that are coming out of the holes. And also it just looks very much different than these other ones. So what am I going to do now? I think I'm going to buy a new set of style 37 M-Pars, a used set. They don't make new ones anymore, except for replicas, so I have to find a really good set. The good thing is that I do have a friend of mine down in Phoenix, Mahar, that I've bought some other parts on this car from him, and he has a set that's available. So we'll negotiate a little bit with him and see if he's interested in selling those. But for right now, I'm going to put all these bad boys away. Probably put these back on because it's going to take me a while to get the other ones finished. And my hope is I'm actually going to have this car running for me, which is today, because I'm getting ready to start working on that and filming that, and we'll have to put these bad boys back on. So I learned a valuable lesson on making sure that everything that was important to me about this car, I should have checked on it beforehand, but you know, lessons learned. It's fixable, and so we'll fix it. All right, next up in today's episode is going to be the fuel injectors. There was nothing wrong with this fuel injectors when I turned this car off. It's just that when I took the intake off and all of that stuff, and I had to remove the fuel rail, the pintle caps and all the fuel injectors were, for the most part, broken or really old and brittle, like just about everything else on this car. So I went ahead and removed all of them and did a quick look over them and realized they just needed a good refurbishment. So I went out and I got like a $20 kit that included new rings on both ends, new pintle caps, and new filters for them. So I went ahead and refurbished them all, and I recorded that. This was a couple of weeks ago, but I thought I would go ahead and show you guys that process. Any guesses on whether or not I had to replace any of these? You can tell that the caps on some of these guys are broken off, and of course those pieces fell down into the top of the piston, and hopefully they disintegrated, because several of these are either cracked or missing pieces altogether. So luckily these are relatively easy to get the caps off of here. Since these are broken, these are going to come off pretty easily. That one just pops off. One of these that maybe is not completely off, you can just kind of grab it and just got to be gentle with it and break it. Just want to be careful not to damage the injector. So I'm glad that I decided to do this, to pull these injectors out and take a look at them, because you know, putting these back in would have been a mistake. There you go. And once those guys come off, the O-rings come off really quick and easy. And then the bottom one's already off, so just gotta do one of these at a time. There we go. O-ring's off already. And once you get that O-ring on, this cap is ready to go on. It's actually pretty easy. It's very tight fit. Once you get these all set onto the ends of the injectors, is you have to push them all the way down. It might be a little hard to see on there, so that it's sitting down into that groove. And a little trick you can actually use is to take your clip. You see how it's got a little bit of an opening there that's bigger than this. You can set it upside down, then take your injector so that the injector part of it is in the center of that circle, and then just press down until it pops in. There you go. All done. Next, it's time to change out the tiny filters in each injector, as they're likely pretty old as well. I set this longer screw into a pair of needle nose vice grips because it takes just a little bit of effort to get the screw set in the filter far enough to pull it out. Now, there are special tools you can buy to pull out those filters, but I found the right screw size works just as well if you're careful. Now you can twist the injector gently onto the end of the screw just a few turns until it won't pull out very easily. Once you've twisted it on a few times, you'll be ready to pull the filter out, but it's set in the ejector pretty tightly. I found that putting a rag over my vise to protect the edge of the injector and then lightly tapping on the vice grips with a hammer to pull the filter out works really well. I wrap the injector in the rag so that it doesn't go flying and to protect it when tapping with a hammer. Now you can see how yellow and degraded the filter is, and several of them were also torn, and I don't think it was because of the screw. Then I take a little bit of throttle body cleaner and I clean up both ends just to make sure they're clear of dirt and debris. Once they're clean and dry, it's time to put the new filter in. Now you could try and hammer it back in, but that seems like it could damage the injector or set the filter screen in incorrectly, and so I found that using the vise as a bit of a press to push the filter back in gently worked perfectly. And that is all 8 injectors done. Now I'm going to go ahead and clean them all up, and then I'm going to put them on the bench here real quick and just make sure that they all activate and that they're all working right now before I put them back into the car. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the resistance on all of them to make sure that they're all the same or pretty close with one another, and then we're going to test really quickly with the power source just to make sure that they actuate like they're supposed to. And I don't have any reason to think that they wouldn't, but one of the things that you should know about these injectors is if you're looking directly at the injector like this, on the left-hand side above it, there's a little plus. So it tells you that the left-hand side of the injector, when it faces you like this, is the positive side. When you're checking resistance, it doesn't matter, but I'm still going to do that anyway. So let's test this first one really quick just to see what our baseline resistance is. Let's see. Here we go. 15.4 for that first one. 15.6 on that one. 15.5. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. All right, good news. All 8 injectors are exactly the same for the most part, within 0.1 on the ohm reading there, or on the resistance reading. So we're good to go. So let's get the power out and test to make sure that they're all actuating. All right, again, because positive is on the left-hand side, I'll connect my negative lead to the right-hand side, and then we can just touch the positive on the other. You might be able to hear that because it's a solenoid. You should be able to hear these pretty clearly. So that one is working just fine. That one sounded a little interesting. That one's good. So the one that sounds a little bit odd is this one. So let's try this one again. So that one sounds a little bit, it sounds a little bit like something is, it's not bad on it by any stretch of the imagination because it's working. Those two just seem like they have a little bit different sound to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these on banks 1 and 5, which I think are the 2 front banks on the car, so that I know that if I get any sort of reading on misfires on banks 1 and 5, and like a P0300 or 308 or whatever those codes are that are fuel, related, then I'll have a good indicator that maybe it's these guys. So hopefully that helps. Hey there, sorry for the quick interruption. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to jump in really quickly and say thank you to all the new subscribers we've had come in over the last month and a half or so. I really appreciate you guys stopping by and hitting that subscribe button. I also wanted to give a big thank you to my very first Patreon, Eric Knutson. I hope that's okay that I said it that way. You've actually got 4 names and I wasn't sure exactly how to pronounce it, but thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. I hope you've also noticed that I am shortening the video length down just a little bit. I hope you guys like it. If you do, let me know down in the comments. I would really appreciate it. If you're enjoying the video, please give it a like and a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. I would really like to try to get to that 1,000 subscriber and 4,000 watch hour threshold so we can monetize this channel. And that's really important to me because when this car is done, I want to be able to get new cars and continue doing this in the future. And to do that, I could really use your guys' help. So if you haven't done that yet, please consider doing so. So let's get on to doing the engine mounts. It's a little hard to see the engine mount from the top side, but you can see that long ratchet extension I needed to reach the top of the 16mm nut on the driver's side engine mount just below the power steering reservoir. Now, I hadn't planned on changing the engine mounts, but as I had to disconnect them to raise the engine up an inch or so that I could access that last banjo bolt on the power steering lines, it made sense to just replace the mounts at the same time. After removing the 2 13mm nuts holding the mount to the subframe, I had to raise the engine up a little bit. Now, because I have the car up on quick jacks, my floor jack was just barely not tall enough at full extension to get the mount out. So I had to lower it down again, add another 2x4 and raise it again. And that did the trick. After setting them down and looking at them side by side with the new ones, I'm really glad I changed them out, and I'm going to do the transmission mounts as well. The rubber on the driver's side was cracked and wide open, and both were clearly flattened out compared to the new ones. The new one went in super easily, and one of the interesting things to me is that the brackets connected to the engine are used on different cars from the same era, and so there are 2 holes in each of them. The E38 utilizes the back one, so make sure you set it up to reuse the proper hole. And of course, while I had the engine jacked up, I went ahead and replaced that last power steering line, which you can tell is really hard to capture on camera. It's kind of a tough spot. Once both sides are done, I can carefully lower the engine back down. Now, I did this in several steps, lowering it, checking the alignment on the bolts for the mounts, and then lowering it a little bit more until the engine is securely on the mount. Then I replaced the upper 16mm nut, snug it down a little bit, and then torque it to 47 Newton meters. And then I moved to the bottom and snug the lower bolts and torque those to 22 Newton meters. Hello, how are you today? You know, these are my kind of the bitchin' steampunk glasses, I think. The VANOS are back. We get to put those in the next episode.